That young man will forever be the face of false paternity or paternity fraud to me. Because what's different about this situation is that he never claimed to be the father, knew he wasn't the father, told her he wasn't the father, didn't spend a lot of time with the child, and you can still see how that news absolutely destroyed him. This ain't the Maury, I told you I wasn't the father reaction, and that's crazy to me. Because imagine his reaction if he deeply wanted to be the father. If that child was his everything and that news just ripped his heart out like it does to most, that man would have probably had a heart attack in that courtroom. Unfortunately, many men, like this young man, have found out that their son or daughter is not their son or daughter by means other than the woman they were involved with being truthful about her promiscuous ways. That woman, in many cases, being that man's wife. There was a judge in the news, just a few weeks back. It took him 51 years to find out this information. For 51 years, a lying, trifling, low-life involved him and her children in a lie to cover her ass. And I imagine in more cases than not, it's just like this case, where the child gets placed on the husband, the boyfriend, or the best man of the available bunch, because there are so many men that they don't even know who could possibly be the father. Hell, I bet they wouldn't even know more than a name for most of them. These are the worst human beings on planet fucking Earth. Not only because you have no problem doing a man like this, but because you'll have your own child living a lie to protect yourself. Because not only is it crushing for a man to have created that bond, then be served with that cold tray of reality, but if that man decides to walk out of that child's life, which no one can blame him for, then it becomes even more crushing for that child. How do you answer when they ask, "Where's daddy?" You know, one of the most heartbreaking decisions I've ever had to make was at my brother's funeral, when deciding whether or not to allow my 3-year-old nephew to see his dad one last time, laying in his casket. When his mom asked what we should do, I said we have to let him see him one more time. It was crushing for me to hold my 3-year-old nephew over this casket and watch him try to wake up his dad. Again, I ask, what do you tell them when they ask, "Where's daddy?" We know you don't tell them the truth because they're a child. They can't even comprehend that. But do you double back when they are of age and tell them what really happened? Nah? Oh, that's just another ain't shit daddy in the world, huh? And shout out to the men who continue to have a relationship with that child under the guise of uncle or even still as dad, because they couldn't crush that child's heart by leaving like that and breaking that bond. And I know some may see this as simp behavior, but we have to be mindful that the child is innocent and a real bond was created. So yes, while I can't blame a man for leaving and there's no respect lost for him in that situation, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the men that say, "I'm still your dad," because they put in that time, built that bond, and that's a real relationship to them. But even they will have to be honest with that child when that child is of age. And the reason why this is much worse in our community is because we are already disconnected from our true identity, from our true heritage as Black people. We have to do a DNA test to find out who the fuck we are. When we go back to the Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, we have to learn the language, a language that should be native to our tongues. To have your child believing they come from this man and his lineage, and to have that man believing that he's extending his family's rebuilt legacy, all to protect yourself, you are trash. There's no other way to describe you. I mean, there is, but I know YouTube won't appreciate me calling you the raggedy dog you are. These children deserve to know who their fathers are. Not only because the child needs to know who they are and where they come from and be able to build a bond with that family, but because also there may be health issues that are hereditary that the parent and child needs to be aware of. And the way I see it, there's only one solution. I've said this before, y'all have said it a million times. DNA tests need to be mandatory at birth. It is common sense legislation. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if your 4 previous children checked out. I don't care if the baby is born a spitting image of you. Before any man signs the birth certificate for any child, let's verify he is indeed the biological father of that child. Because whether it's 51 years, 30 years, 10 years, or 10 months, the devastation is tremendous. Especially when that man really wanted to be a father and he himself grew up without a father. Most men who grew up without their fathers cannot wait to become fathers. And just like many of the other issues that I speak about on this channel, This is another case where one is one too many. And for these filthy, unstable creatures to play these types of games, that makes them the lowest of the low. Any man or woman who opposes a DNA test for a child has something to hide. It's no different than when you take your spouse's phone. If they instantly become defensive, you already found out your answer. And yes, I said man or woman, because there's also another filthy creature walking this earth that's lower than whale shit and must be included in that designation. Because there are men moving just as slimy as some of these women. And we know I have no respect for such a being. If you decide to step outside your relationship and the result of that is a child being born from that side situation, man the fuck up and give that child the father they deserve. Take that child under your wing the same way you would have if they were birthed by your wife. Y'all trying to hide these kids to save your marriage? Hide these kids to save your public image? Paying women hush money? Ducking a DNA test so that you don't have to be responsible for child support? And that's fucking trash. Ain't nothing about that respected. If you can't handle all the possible outcomes of a situation, then simply do not partake in that situation. There are brothers who have a DNA test proving they're the father of a child, but won't take responsibility. Won't pull up on that child to see how they're doing. Won't take them to school. Won't take them to the park. Won't buy them a Happy Meal. Won't even keep a steady job because they're afraid of child support. How are you afraid of having a child? Afraid of responsibilities as a father, afraid of child support, but you're not afraid of all of the things you're afraid of comes from something that y'all be super geeked to enter. I have so much to say about this, but I will be here forever. So I'm going to close with this. Everybody was talking about the Club Shay interview with Cat Williams, and rightfully so. But the interview that everybody should have been talking about before that, the interview that should have reached hundreds of millions of views before that, was the interview he did with Kirk Franklin. If every one of us saw that 2 or 3 times, if all of the content creators reacted to that with the same energy, we'd be having a much different conversation right now. A link to what I'm talking about is in the description, because me telling you his story does it no justice. I understand vengeance belongs to God, but I swear I get on this mic sometimes and feel like Scrappy Doo. Let me at him, Uncle Scooby. Please. That concludes this series. These are the worst lies told in the Black community.
First, they were saying he's not going to live more than a couple breaths. And then it went from that to, well, if he do live, he'll be a vegetable. He won't talk, see, hear. Like, he'll just be a vegetable until the day he died. So then they was like, so what do you want us to do? Do you want us to save him, or do you want us to just let nature take its course? And my exact words to the doctor, I remember he was Dr. Paco. His last name was Paco.
Paco.
I told him, I stood up, I promise you, bro, I stood up and got so close to him. I said, if y'all don't do everything y'all supposed to do to save my son, they gonna have to do that shit to save you. And he like walked out the room like, like
So you basically you remember that movie John Q? So you had a John Q moment.
Yeah, I was on some John Q stuff, bro. I was like, hey, if y'all don't save my son, y'all gonna need help saving y'all's life. Like I was in the mode like, nah.